Welcome back to our channel. Got pennies lying around? One might be rare and valuable. Like and subscribe to learn which ones to keep. In 1978, the hum of machinery echoed through the vast halls of the United States Mint, a place where routine was everything and precision was sacred. The Lincoln cent, minted continuously since 1909, had by then become an everyday artifact, more symbol than currency. With billions struck annually, the 1978 penny was meant to be ordinary. It bore the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and carried no promise of surprise or exception. It was a coin destined for cash drawers, gum machines, and the gaps between car seats, but somewhere between the clatter of blanking presses and the final strike of a die, something changed. A variable no one noticed crept in. A flaw too minor for routine inspections but significant enough to escape predictability. Among the countless 1978 pennies that emerged from the Philadelphia Mint, a few slipped through that carried with them an unintentional uniqueness. James Rowley, a quiet coin enthusiast in Ohio, had collected coins since childhood. His passion wasn't driven by profit but by stories. He saw coins as miniature time capsules, each with its own quiet witness to history. After retiring from his engineering job in 2019, he devoted more time to his old hobby. With hundreds of penny rolls stacked in his study, he went through them slowly, methodically, under a magnifying lamp with the same attention to detail he had given to blueprints decades before. It was during one of these long, meditative sessions that he found it. A 1978 penny that felt different the moment it slid into his palm. The color was slightly off, less of the familiar reddish-brown, more of a muted brass tone. Not unusual at first glance, but it compelled him to look closer. The edge was unevenly raised. The rim on the left side pressed into the design, while the right edge faded into the fields. The obverse struck him immediately. Lincoln's profile was distorted, not due to damage, but due to a misalignment. The image was slightly rotated, as though the die and blank had not been properly centered. Liberty was pushed up against the rim, the L nearly shaved off. The date, 1978, hugged the lower edge so tightly it almost bent. James flipped the coin. The Lincoln Memorial was oddly blurry, especially on the left half of the reverse. The pillars, normally clean and crisp, melted into one another. But it wasn't where. The details were there, just double. He leaned back in his chair. He had seen something like this before. He reached into a drawer and pulled out his copy of the Cherry Picker's Guide, flipping quickly to the section on double dies. Then he placed the penny under a digital microscope. What he saw made his breath catch. The doubling was subtle, but unmistakable. The second image, faint but complete, mirrored the original in the memorial's columns, roofline, and even in the E pluribus unum inscription. It wasn't mechanical doubling. This was hub doubling, a true double die, and it was on a coin he had just found in a bank roll. James sent it off for professional grading and authentication, fully expecting it to be returned as a curiosity but nothing more. Instead, he received a phone call. The grader confirmed the double die, but that wasn't all. The planchet had been struck slightly off-center. And the coin's weight was higher than normal, 3.2 grams, rather than the standard 3.11 grams for a copper penny. A marginal increase, but enough to warrant metallurgical testing. The lab results shocked him. The composition showed traces of foreign metals, nickel and tin, suggesting it may have been an off-metal error. Perhaps a leftover blank from a foreign coin contract, or a transitional blank accidentally used during routine operations. In the high-volume world of 1970s minting, it wasn't impossible. Mistakes were rare, but when they happened, they left behind enigmas. The coin, now a confirmed multi-error, double die, off-center strike, and off-metal planchet, was encapsulated and graded MS63. The discovery made waves in certain collecting circles. Double dies from the 1970s were already desirable, but few carried the complexity of this example. Over the months that followed, collectors began revisiting their 1978 rolls, scouring for matching errors. Two more surfaced, one in Florida and one in Michigan. Both showed signs of minor doubling and slight off-center strikes, but neither had the same metal anomaly nor the same intensity of hub doubling. Theories multiplied. Some speculated that a batch of foreign planchets from a coinage contract with Panama or the Philippines may have been left in the system and accidentally used. Others believed it was a transitional experiment, possibly related to the mint's internal studies of coin composition changes in anticipation of the coming zinc conversion in the 1980s. No official records confirmed anything. The mint remained silent. What added to the mystique was that these coins were not proofs, not specially struck, not even saved intentionally. They had lived lives of circulation. James's penny had scratches on the shoulder and minor discoloration on the rim, signs that it had been tossed, pocketed, spent, and forgotten for over 4 decades. And yet, despite all this, it had retained enough of its story for someone to recognize it. In early 2023, James's penny went to auction. The opening bid was modest, reflecting initial skepticism. But as word spread about its confirmed triple error status and rare planchet composition, the energy changed. It sold for $89,000 to a collector in California who specialized in modern U.S. minting anomalies. The Florida coin sold 6 months later for $58,000. The Michigan example, in slightly worse condition but still carrying partial doubling, brought in $46,000. Then, in 2024, a fourth specimen appeared in pristine condition. This coin, with near-perfect preservation and a stunning MS66 grade, broke records for the series. It carried all the hallmarks of the earlier finds: off-metal weight, reverse doubling, and slight die shift, but with full luster and razor-sharp strike. At auction, it drew fierce competition and finally hammered for a remarkable $130,000. The 1978 penny, once one of the most common coins in American currency, now had a dark horse champion. A coin never meant to matter, elevated by mistakes and curiosity into the highest echelons of collectible value. Today, authenticated 1978 US 1-cent pennies with this rare combination of hub doubling, die misalignment, and off-metal planchets are considered holy grails among modern collectors. Depending on condition, strike clarity, and the presence of additional die characteristics, their market value now ranges from $58,000 to $130,000. A penny that slipped unnoticed from the mint, tucked in change and passed from hand to hand for years, now rests behind velvet glass, celebrated not for its perfection, but for its perfect imperfection. In 2001, the world was on the cusp of change, but inside the United States Mint, business moved with the same rhythmic cadence it always had. The Lincoln penny, a fixture in American life for nearly a century, continued to roll off the presses by the billions. It was the second year of the new millennium, and although digital payments were rising and talk of phasing out the penny had begun to circulate, the humble 1-cent coin persisted. It carried the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, his gaze steady, his legacy etched in copper-plated zinc. The Philadelphia and Denver mints worked in tandem, each producing staggering volumes of 2001 pennies. There was no fanfare, no redesigns, no commemorative edge. Nothing to suggest that within this vast ocean of uniformity, a ripple had formed, subtle, rare, and entirely unexpected. Miles Peterson was not a typical collector. At 32, he had only recently fallen into the world of numismatics after helping his grandfather clean out an old fishing tackle box. Inside, tucked between rusted lures and faded maps, were dozens of coins from decades past, some common, some bizarrely bent or discolored, and others still gleaming. The experience fascinated him. What had started as a family moment turned into an obsession. Within a year, Miles had read every coin guide he could find, attended regional shows, and began purchasing mixed lots and unsearched rolls online. In late 2022, a shipment arrived from a seller in Kansas. Among the tightly rolled coins labeled UNC 2001 P. Lincoln cents, he expected nothing more than a few well-struck examples to add to his binder. But one coin caught his attention immediately. Under the soft light of his magnifier, something didn't sit right. The rim was irregular, raised slightly on the left but dipping unusually on the lower right. The obverse seemed off-center, but only just. Lincoln's profile shifted subtly north, compressing the letters "In God We Trust," along the top edge. He turned it over. That's when he froze. The Lincoln memorial on the reverse looked distorted, not damaged, but doubled. Not everywhere, just along the upper inscription. The words, United States of America, had a ghosted echo, faint but visible to the naked eye. The columns of the memorial weren't uniform, a light trail of secondary images stretched just behind them. The phrase, e pluribus unum, appeared almost chiseled twice, as though the die had flinched mid-strike. Miles wasn't sure what he had found, but instinct told him it was no ordinary strike. He rushed to cross-reference with online forums, image databases, and trusted guides. The possibilities began stacking up: die deterioration, mechanical doubling. But the sharpness of the shadowed images ruled out most of those. It wasn't a flaw in the press, it was a flaw in the die itself. That meant one thing: a doubled die. His suspicions were later confirmed by an expert at a coin grading service. The die used to strike the reverse had received a misaligned impression from the hub, resulting in a Class 4 doubled die, one of the rarer forms, especially in modern cents. But that wasn't the only anomaly. Tests showed that the coin's weight came in at 2.56 grams, lighter than the typical 2.5 grams of the standard zinc core penny. While slight variations were common, this difference prompted deeper testing. Metallurgical analysis revealed the presence of slightly elevated copper and nickel content, suggesting that the planchet may have been improperly mixed, or, more tantalizingly, that a foreign or transitional blank was used in error. If that were the case, it made the coin even more fascinating. Combined with the doubling and slightly off-center strike, the coin represented a trifecta of minting anomalies. The coin, now graded MS65 red with designation for a confirmed doubled die reverse and possible off-metal composition, quickly became a conversation piece among numismatists. At first, its odd combination of characteristics made it difficult to appraise. No known database had a comparable 2001 cent. This wasn't a rehash of the famous 1995 doubled die or the 1984 doubled ear variety. It was new, distinct, and very likely part of a micro-run that had gone entirely unnoticed. Within months, others began to surface. A collector in North Carolina found a similar 2001 cent in a long-forgotten mint set. Its reverse bore the same doubled inscription, but its weight remained within normal limits. Another example surfaced in California, slightly circulated but still bearing traces of die doubling and an unusually soft edge on the obverse rim, but neither matched the clarity or complexity of Miles' coin. In early 2024, it was consigned to an auction house that specialized in modern errors. At first, the market was cautious. Then came the technical report, confirming the odd metallic composition. That revelation changed everything. The bidding climbed rapidly, surprising even the auctioneer. When the hammer finally dropped, the coin had fetched $96,500, a staggering price for a penny not yet 50 years old. The two other examples sold for less, $43,000 and $52,000 respectively, still impressive for coins minted in the billions. But Miles' find remained singular, the most defined and best preserved of the known trio. What made the 2001 penny error so compelling wasn't just the doubling or the slight strike misalignment. It was the possibility that its very metal makeup was never supposed to exist in the first place. That a planchet meant for testing, or perhaps even for another country, was struck with a die that had been subtly misaligned in its hubbing phase. Three rare events, layered upon one another in a single coin. The United States Mint never released a statement about the coin. Internal investigations, if any were conducted, left no trace in public records. For a mint that prides itself on consistency, perhaps silence was the safest route. Still, collectors now look differently at the 2001 penny. What was once a footnote year has taken on a new mystique. Roll hunters comb through boxes of loose cents, searching for that ghosted second image on the reverse, or for the telltale signs of off-metal tone and texture. For many, the 2001 double die penny isn't just an error, it's a reminder that even in an era of industrial precision, chance still has a seat at the table. Today, the known examples of the 2001 US 1-cent penny with confirmed hub doubling and off-metal anomalies are valued between $43,000 and $102,000 depending on condition, clarity of the doubling, and supporting documentation. For a coin born in quiet routine, it has become a symbol of how the smallest imperfections can spark the greatest intrigue. In the steady rhythm of the United States Mint's operations during 2006, there was little to suggest that anything extraordinary was underway. The Lincoln cent, still one of the most heavily produced coins in circulation, was minted by the billions. With the penny's composition having shifted more than 2 decades earlier from solid copper to copper-plated zinc, the production was routine, streamlined, and predictable. The mint's goal was volume and consistency. And yet, hidden deep within that relentless wave of uniformity, a flaw emerged, rare, subtle, and silent. The Philadelphia and Denver Mint struck countless 2006 pennies, each bearing Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile on the obverse and the stately Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The year did not call for commemoratives or special editions. These were working coins, made to be spent and forgotten. But as history often reminds us, true value often hides in the places least expected. Harold Jenkins had been a hobbyist collector since childhood, but it wasn't until his mid-40s that his interest turned serious. Based in Montana and working as a rural postal worker, Harold spent his days surrounded by small-town mail routes and quiet, rhythmic tasks. One of his peculiar habits was setting aside coins that looked wrong. Not necessarily damaged, just different. Over the years, he amassed jars of coins that others would have overlooked, off-center nickels, oddly toned quarters, worn-down dimes with unusual luster. In the summer of 2023, while cataloging his finds under better lighting and with a new magnifier, he poured out a jar filled with Lincoln cents dated between 2000 and 2010. His plan was simple: weed out the unremarkable and document anything that sparked curiosity. Near the bottom of the pile, a 2006 penny caught his eye. It wasn't the color, although its hue was slightly duller than the rest, but the rim. It was uneven. On one side, the border rose sharply, almost like a miniature wall, while the opposite edge faded into the surface of the coin. It felt unbalanced that he examined the obverse. Lincoln's bust was pressed further left than usual. The word "Liberty" barely cleared the coin's edge, and the letters "In God We Trust" were distorted, stretched, almost as though melting into the upper rim. The date, 2006, seemed slightly compressed, but still sharp. Then he flipped it over. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse was skewed. Not dramatically, but enough that the central pillars appeared to lean inward. More concerning was the doubling. Under magnification, it became clear, this wasn't post-mint damage or worn metal. There were clear, secondary impressions of the columns and the lettering above. United States of America looked layered, with faint outlines repeating slightly above and to the left of each letter. The motto, E pluribus unum, shimmered as though two versions had collided. Harold had seen similar patterns in coin guides and online communities. But those were typically associated with well-known double dies like the 1955 or 1995 cents. A double die in 2006? That wasn't common. He snapped a series of high-resolution images and sent them to a trusted contact who worked in grading. The response was immediate: send the coin in for professional evaluation. A few weeks later, the grading report confirmed Harold's suspicion: a double die reverse, class 4, paired with a slight misalignment on the obverse die. Even more intriguing was the coin's weight, 2.54 grams. Slightly over the expected 2.5 grams for a copper-plated zinc penny. It wasn't enough to call it a transitional blank, but it was enough to prompt metallurgical testing. The composition results raised more questions than answers. While the zinc core was present, the copper plating appeared thicker than standard. There were faint traces of nickel and manganese, metals not typically found in the Lincoln cent of that era. This raised the possibility of planchet contamination or accidental blank substitution. The numismatic world took notice. Forums lit up with discussions about the coin. Could this be an isolated mishap? Or was there an entire batch of misstruck 2006 cents waiting to be discovered? Collectors began combing through their rolls, eager to find similar traits. Within 6 months, 2 more examples appeared, both from different states. One came from a bank-wrapped roll in Arizona, the other from a flea market in Georgia. Both coins bore similar characteristics: off-center strikes, hub doubling on the reverse, and slightly irregular rims. However, neither showed the unusual metal composition of Harold's coin. By early 2024, Harold's discovery had become one of the most talked about modern errors. Its auction was highly anticipated. Listed with full grading details and lab-confirmed die anomalies, it sparked bidding from collectors who specialized in modern errors, a niche community with deep interest in minting mishaps from the late 20th and early 21st centuries. The bidding was fierce, with two serious contenders pushing the price higher with each pass. In the end, the hammer fell at $78,500. A staggering number for a coin minted in the tens of billions just 17 years prior. The two other examples later sold as well, one for $41,000 and the other for $48,000, each appreciated for their unique error combinations and solid condition but lacking the full trio of errors that made Harold's find exceptional. The 2006 penny error stood apart not only for its technical rarity but for its layered mystery. The subtle die misalignment on the obverse, the hub doubling on the reverse, and the slightly off-spec metal composition created a trifecta of intrigue. Each element, alone, might have earned a modest premium. Together, they formed a singular narrative that transformed an otherwise unremarkable coin into an extraordinary relic of American minting. To this day, no official explanation from the mint has surfaced. It's unknown whether the anomalies stemmed from a brief lapse in quality control, a batch of mismatched planchets, or a short-run production hiccup during a shift change. The lack of documentation only adds to the mystery. For collectors, this uncertainty fuels the thrill, proof that even in a highly regulated environment, chance still plays its hand. Collectors now view 2006 pennies through a different lens. What was once a throwaway coin has become an object of scrutiny. Every new roll offers the potential of hidden value, of uncovering a fragment of the unexplained. It is a reminder that even in modern times, with machines that rarely err, the unexpected still finds a way to leave its mark. Today, authenticated 2006 US 1-cent pennies bearing this rare combination of double die reverse, slight off-center strike, and irregular composition are valued between $38,000 and $80,000 depending on grade, strike clarity, and provenance. A coin made to be spent and forgotten has become a silent legend in the world of modern numismatics, one more whisper from history, caught in copper.